Hi everyone, welcome to the Spotlight video on our Introduction to Learning Theories. So in this video we're going to cover a couple of things. First of all, we're going to think about, in this chapter it talked about how there's always this tension between, for learning and development, how much is innate and how much is guided by environmental forces and how much do those two intersect. What we do know and now appreciate is that learning is complex and nuanced, and thankfully our research tools now reflect that. We're also going to think about how to apply learning theories to educational spaces. So first of all, for our assessment of learning, historically we had a really simplistic view of what learning was and how to measure it. And so we thought about learning and whatever skills we were trying to teach. We could measure that through a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. And that would tell us how much knowledge a child had gained and would give us a summary of their knowledge and skill set. Well, what we know now is that that's probably one piece, right? Would we really look at standardized test assessment and say, here's this child, here's this full profile to help understand where their learning is at? Absolutely not. What we know is that that is just one piece. And so our assessment tools and our research tools now reflect that it's not just about outcome, but also about process. And that needs to be looked at in a variety of ways, from direct observations, whether that be with a whole class or an individual student, written responses or artifacts that might be done along the way or as a final product, recordings or participation in dialogues or interactions in the classroom. And then we also have, rating scales and self-reports that we use to look at student learning. And we've even branched out to include, visuals, students creating visuals, us using visuals to capture what is going on in the learning process, as well as with outcomes. So research is very much connected to theory because qualitative research has helped us build theories, construct theories. And then we use quantitative research to test those theories. We can never fully prove a theory, but we can gather evidence and research to support it. So a little bit about learning theories. There's no single universally accepted theory that exists. And I find that some come in and out of fashion, but there's not just one go-to. Each theory is based upon a little bit of research and evidence from the world, as well as just a set of assumptions and beliefs about human nature and different phenomena. Even in our first week's post, I asked you to theorize about something. Well, you selected some evidence of the world, maybe some things you've experienced or observed, as well as just your general assumptions about something, and you brought both of those together to theorize. Some theories are interrelated and complementary. This semester you will see a lot of principles that overlap. But then some are completely contradictory, which we're going to talk about a little bit. Some say it's purely genetic, some say it's purely environmental. We have grand and broad theories that we'll talk about towards the beginning of the semester, but then we'll move into more specific ones, and you'll continue to learn about kind of more specific or refined ones in future courses. So we're going to do a little theory activity here, thinking about what do you see? And this is actually going to help us understand our lens through which we see the world. So for each picture, I want you to think about, what do you see? Okay, looking at this, what do you see? In the past, I've had students who have told me, oh, I see a dog who's happy and playing. I've also had students who have said, oh, that dog is about to attack someone, right? So based on your evidence of the world of like, what does a dog look like when they're playful? Oh, a lot of times they'll jump, they'll salivate, right, in certain ways. Versus maybe what is your evidence when a dog is on guard or being aggressive towards someone. So that would be a theory of what you're seeing here. I've also asked students to tell me, okay, when you look at this picture, what do you see? Some people say, well, I see someone has tied a bow on their finger. But I've also had some students say, oh, you do that to, this person is trying to remember something. Or they've made a promise to someone. And so kind of culturally or just based on how you've been socialized, you might see this picture differently in what it means. Most importantly, what do you see when you look at this picture of a student? I've had people tell me, oh, this student is exhausted, maybe sleep deprivation. I've had students tell me, okay, this student's frustrated or overwhelmed. I've had students tell me this student's lazy or just disengaged. Right? And this is really important because the lens through which we view students has consequences. Whatever you were to tell me there is going to guide you to probably act in a certain way with that student, and that has positive and negative consequences. So theories do hold a lot of power. How we see the world holds a lot of power over students' lives. Why theories are so important for professionals is, first of all, it gives us purpose for structure, routines, and expectations. You may find that even when you look through our schedule and syllabus here. I believe learning is a social process. You are going to be interacting with each other on a consistent basis, right? So it gives us some consistency in practice, as well as strategies for supporting student success and problem solving. So let's explore a case. Let's pretend in this case you have a 5-year-old who's just been given a kindergarten, some type of screening, and on that they score significantly lower than other kids in their age group. Okay, so what would different theorists say about this? Well, we've got our theorist here, and this is going to be our maturationist theorist. And what that means, like from this perspective, so maturationist theory suggests that learning and development is a biological process, so the nature argument instead of the nurture argument. And so it's more genetic. We're wired in a certain way. It happens automatically in sequential stages. If a child is behind in certain activities, give them more time to develop, or there might be an underlying issue. It also suggests that interventions are not necessarily helpful. So what the environment can do won't necessarily change what you're seeing. So if this were someone's theory, and the situation was this 5-year-old scored a lot lower than their peers on a kindergarten screening, their recommendation would be wait another year. If you've heard of kids being redshirted or held back a year, starting a year late, that's a maturationist theory. Like learning, this is a biological process. By next year, they'll be ready for kindergarten. Now let's move to a different theory. Okay, let's say we have the exact same situation. A 5-year-old scores a lot lower than their peers on an assessment. Well, a behaviorist, someone from the who believes in behaviorism, believes learning and development depends entirely on experiences with the environment. So instead of the maturationist, who is all genetics, behaviorists are all environment. They believe that children are born blank slates, and adults must purposefully shape children's growth. And therefore, learning occurs in small incremental steps as children are conditioned. Well, they're going to give a completely different recommendation based on this theory. They're going to say this child needs resources, maybe a summer program with some explicit teaching where they are learning these concepts. They're exposed to these things because it is all environmental, and they believe that will help prepare them for that first day of kindergarten. So as you can see, theories really matter because they guide our decision making, and they really do impact children and their experiences with school. I can also tell individual theories just by simply walking into a classroom. So it's amazing, just stepping foot to see how a classroom is organized tells me a lot about that teacher's theory of learning. So are desks more in a row with more kind of individualized, independent work? That would be more of a behaviorist. Or are they clustered into groups where you can tell that in this classroom there's probably going to be a lot of exchanges between peers, maybe group work, collaboration, more of a social process? Then that's probably more of Vygotsky's theory. I can also tell in just looking in where the positioning of a teacher is. Okay, so for instance, I walk in and I see that the teacher is more in the front of the classroom, or all eyes are on the teacher, where there is more kind of direct instruction going on, where the teacher is the source of knowledge. That is more behaviorism. Versus I walk into a classroom and I'm like, oh, kids are kind of developing kind of this knowledge together, or sharing knowledge with one another, whether that be in small groups or kind of working on projects together, where the teacher is not necessarily the source of knowledge, but more of the facilitator of learning. And that would be more of Vygotsky and Piaget. And so this semester, hopefully you'll be able to start identifying your personal theory based on going through these different theories and kind of picking and pulling together the different principles that help shape the way that you see the world.